Today's guest is a professional who has created a personal journey as a speaker, storyteller, writer, mentor, coach, problem solver, community activator, and more. His goal is to engage individuals in their personal and professional development and work with teams and organizations on alignment. Welcome to the show, Sam. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Toby, and I appreciate you having me on here. And hopefully I can provide some insights to your audience.
Yes, I'm so grateful that you made the time out to speak with me today on Mirror Talk. I appreciate your presence here right now. I would just love to start with you with your tagline. Your signatory tagline states that everyone's life is an autobiography. Make yours worth reading. How did you come up with this, and can you explain this tagline to us?
Yeah, so everyone's life is an autobiography. Make yours worth reading is a tagline that I live by. And the essence of that is the fact that we're all living stories. We are all autobiographies in development. Oftentimes, when I'm interacting and meeting with people, they may feel insignificant, or they may feel, well, I'm just average. Mm. The idea is, no, we are all unique individuals. We've all these experiences. And the essence of it is to live your story, live your autobiography, and to make it worth reading. It doesn't mean you have to go out and do dangerous things. What it means is really reflect and realize the significance that you bring into this world.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that so much. That means we all have, something to share, something to, impact the world with through our stories or in any way. Yeah. But can you enlighten me on the importance and the usefulness of personal storytelling? Why is it important for us to tell our stories?
Because I think what happens is we get so caught up in our lives or our routines that we don't realize we're building and making these stories. I always found that stories, and I call it story sharing, not storytelling. And the reason I say story sharing is storytelling is just unilateral, me telling you a story and you listening. Story sharing is where we sit down and have a wonderful conversation. The importance of realizing and sharing your story is to support and help you realize your significance. And said we go through life feeling ordinary, or we get into our routines and we do our daily activities. Yeah. But embedded in the ordinary are these tremendously extraordinary experiences, but we never really are aware of it. So in my first TEDx speech that I did, I talked about discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary, and that was on personal storytelling.
Yeah.
And the way that I went about and supporting people building their stories is through a concept called carpe. Now, carpe diem is seize the day. Carpe is what I do to realize the stories. And carpe stands for curiosity, appreciation, reflection, perspectives, experience. Each one of them plays a significant role. So as we go through life, be curious. And what curiosity means, and that's the first part of carpe, is realizing things for what they, beyond what they normally are. So it might be where, you go for a walk and you take a different pathway, or maybe you are out doing something and you suddenly see something. Curiosity is what stops you. So realize that we should be more curious. Now, when you stop, then appreciation. So whatever has stopped you, appreciate it for more than what it is, instead of just walking past it. So now we start appreciating and adding some purpose and meaning to it. And the way that we add more purpose and meaning is through reflection. That's the R of carpe. Reflection is where we add more depth to the significance of what has stopped us. P stands for perspectives. Perspectives means we all have rich experiences, but we bring in our perspectives to add significance to what stopped us. And then the last one is E for experience. And that's a really important one, because if we don't capture the essence of that experience, our story dies an untimely death. And I'll give you an example of how carpe works, or discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Yes,
So,
please.
for example, what I have in my hand is a single piece of a jigsaw puzzle.
Mm.
And I've given about 5,000 pieces in the world to date. And Toby, if I gave you this single piece of a jigsaw puzzle, what can you do with one piece? Not much.
Nothing. No.
It's ordinary.
Yeah.
But right before your eyes, magically, I'm going to make it extraordinary.
Mm.
Because this is what people feel like. They feel like that single piece of a jigsaw puzzle. They don't know where they fit in. They don't know what the bigger picture is, but this is what they feel like. To make it extraordinary, instead I say, I have a satchel with puzzle pieces. And in the satchel are pieces of my jigsaw puzzle.
Mm.
The realization is that if I give you this piece of a jigsaw puzzle, my puzzle will be permanently incomplete without you.
Yeah.
Do you realize how significant and important you are to my puzzle if I give you this jigsaw puzzle piece?
Yeah.
And that's taking something ordinary and transforming it into extraordinary. And the Carpe principle applied to this, where it was curiosity that stopped me. I appreciated a puzzle piece for more than what it was, but there was something more significant. So I started reflecting on it, and my perspectives kicked in with regards to connectedness, togetherness, relationships. And that's where that significance came from. And then I captured that as an experience. And I've given over 5,000 pieces. The significance of that simple little, analogy I've given you is I have these jigsaw puzzle pieces taped to mirrors around the world, where people say they've taped it to their mirrors. Every morning it reminds them someone told them that they're important.
Mm.
It's traveled in backpacks around the world. It's in wallets, and they show it to me when they meet me at an event. But that's a simple example of how we build this experience and take something ordinary and make it extraordinary.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, something ordinary, I just is some simple puzzle, for example, could be turned to something extraordinary with so much meaning and importance attached to it. Yeah. Wow. So let's convert this into writing, because you're an author too. You have written 2 books.
Yeah.
For anyone who is interested in being a writer, how can they convert this story sharing or storytelling into the books, or how can they make use of this as practical tools to share their stories?
Yeah. So yes, I've got 2 books. The first book is about personal storytelling, discovering the extraordinary and the ordinary. And it's almost like a workbook to help people come up with their stories, or how do we tell stories. And the second book is a memoir of my journey to India to find my ancestral roots, but also my identity. Now, Toby, maybe 8 years ago, I was never a writer. Writing never even factored into my mind. And after I did my first TEDx speech, people said, you should, how can I tell stories? And you should write a book. And then I thought, okay, but I've never done this before. Writing is a difficult journey because, part of it is we feel, well, what have I got to share? What are people going to think about what I share? And I remember in the beginning of my book, the personal storytelling book, I wrote something to the effect of 2 things. By writing this book, there's fear in me in what people may think. But the bigger fear is, what if I don't do this? So in other words, put that fear aside of what people may think. The bigger fear is, what if you don't do it? You'll never realize it. And the other part of that personal storytelling book that was important was, what's the last story you read? What's the last story you told? But what's the last story you lived? And the idea, it's easy for us to read a story. It's easy for us to tell a story. But what about the stories you've lived? And that's what the essence of that book was, to get it out there. For anybody who's interested in being an author, my thing to just start writing, start doing, dig down deep for that inspiration. And I just know for somebody like myself, when I was trying to find an audience, somebody who would be interested in the book or who would be interested in this book, I found it very difficult to write. But when I started writing for myself on what was important to me, the words just flowed.
Mhm.
Now, some people may argue that, it's important to actually realize who your audience is. I mean, that's one of the basic rules of marketing.
Yes,
I'm going
yes.
to twist it a little bit to say no, but equally at the same time, writing is a bit unique. Authenticity is important when it comes to writing. And
Mm.
to be authentic, I need to write for myself.
Yeah.
And then the audience materializes.
That's beautiful. That means you have to know who you are, identify yourself, and use that to write your own story. And that way, your audience, the right people for you, will be attracted to your work. I love
Yes.
that. Yes.
And part of the reason for that is, and to your point, it's so true. When you stop focusing on what you want to do and you start focusing on who you are, that's where the clarity emerges.
Mm.
And again, that's where I mentor and I coach 3 to 8 people a week. And the a lot of what I do is help people realize who they are over what they do. I think as a society and as a narrative that we've all lived, I think we're always introducing ourselves or focused on, what you do.
Mm.
Instead, I want people to start sharing who they are, because once you know who you are,
Mm.
very much to what you just said, it's a lot easier to articulate and see with clarity what the journey is that is going to unfold before you.
Yes, that's true. Wow. See, Sam, so far you've helped me to know how to share stories. Like now I know how to construct myself in a way that I could share the story effectively well. But one thing that's also important is to be a good communicator, for example, be a good communicator. So are there like some practical tools that you could share with me? How can I communicate my story better to the audience so that I could captivate them with this wonderful, extraordinary story I have to share?
Yeah, I think it's all about this art of conversation.
Mm.
It's always been interesting to me because, I teach at university, and oftentimes, you've got the university students, and they used to come to me, and well, they still do, and they say, look, I have to get to an event. How do I get into a conversation?
Mm.
And it always surprised me because I never thought about it. I just go to an event or I meet people and I just talk to them. But I didn't realize how difficult it was for people to get comfortable just talking. And I think sometimes what happens is we're so focused on, what is it that I have to say before I get to the event, or before I get into a conversation with somebody?
Mm.
What is it that I need to do? I always say, it's not that complicated. All you have to do is just have a conversation. I always say, like, for example, you know, people think that you have to have that tremendous, amazing question that's just gonna surprise or just, make it so that people are like, wow, that's a really great question.
Mm.
Toby, if I came to your house for dinner, knocked on the door,
Mhm.
and you opened it, is the very first thing you're going to ask me, Sam, I want to be a better storyteller. Can you give me some real good tips on how to be a storyteller? Is that the first thing you're going to ask me?
No, 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 no way.
What are you going to ask me?
I could just ask you first of all, like, how was your journey? How did you find a way to my place, or how are you doing? Yeah, just
Yeah, or is this the first time you've come a long way, and how was your travel? And like, oh, the travel was great, and I really got to experience this. And you're like, oh, but did you go over here?
mm,
Did you get, how long are you staying here, and have you had a chance to visit here? I'll be like, oh, okay, so that's a place I should go to. And yeah, let me tell you about when I went there, what that was like. And
mm,
now we're getting into a conversation, and that's why I said it's story sharing, because we layer into each other.
mm,
Don't overthink it. And it's always interesting because there's a concept called transaction transformation.
mm,
And I always believe in transformational experiences. And it's always funny. My sons have started to do this now. Whereas, let's say we go to a restaurant, we go to a fast food joint, or we go to a coffee shop.
mm,
It's a very transactional interaction. You're at the grocery store, you walk up to the cash register with your groceries. How are you? Good. How are you? Good. Thank you. Would you like paper, plastic, and etc. And that's very transactional.
Okay.
Well, here's a little story. I mean, I remember I took about 20 of my students to Toronto, and it was late at night. We went there for a competition, academic competition, and it was about 10 o'clock at night. We're all hungry. As we're walking back, we saw a Chipotle's, which is a restaurant, and it's like a fast food restaurant. They make burritos and things like that. And I was the first in line, and the lady looked at me, and transactionally, she just said, "Yes, may I help you? What would you like?" And she points to the menu and she points to the food in front of her because you get to build this burrito, or she would. And I looked at her and her name tag said Mary. I said, "Mary, have you worked here?" She goes, "About 3 years. Why?" And I said, "I eat everything. I want you to make me what you would eat here." And she looked at me and she goes, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, no, make me what you would eat."
Yeah.
So then she was like, okay, a smile appeared on her face. So she took this, this burrito shell, and she has it in front of her. And then she said, "Would you want black beans or brown beans?" I said, "Mary, which ones would you take?" She goes, "Well, black." I said, "Mary, give me the black beans. Don't ask me anymore. And if you ask me one more time, I'm coming in behind the counter and making my own burrito." And then she started laughing. Next thing you know, she's just adding stuff and she's looking at me smiling and adding stuff. And she yells to the cashier, because guacamole is more expensive to add on there. But she goes, "I'm going to put guacamole on his burrito, but you're not charging him for this because that's what I would eat."
Wow.
And then the cashier starts smiling. And next thing you know, she's putting all this stuff in here. And all of a sudden, this burrito is so big, she can't close it.
Oh.
And then she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's too full." And then her cashier said, "Here, let me try." And she's trying to close it. She can't. The manager comes up and says, "Oh, here, let me try." And he can't. And then I just turned to Mary. I said, "Mary, just give me a fork and I'll eat it open face." And everybody started laughing, but which included my students. But here's the important part. At the end, she just said, "Thanks, that was fun." It doesn't have to be complicated, Toby. It's simple. I mean, just have those small interactions with people, and you never know. And it's not to get free guacamole, upgrade on an airline, or any of that stuff. That's not the reason I do this. That's what happens sometimes. But the benefit is, I just feel, you know what, let's just have a conversation and let's make it meaningful. It was something as simple as that. Yes. Another quick interaction I'll share with you that was transformation transactional. When I teach my classes, it's not uncommon that as soon as you say, "Okay, that's it for today, have a good week," you never stand near the door because you'll be stampeded by the students trying to leave as quick as possible. But then one or two students will stand aside and they ask questions. But I remember one of my students quietly would pack her bags. I'm talking to these two students. She would stand by the door. And as I look to the door, I see her standing there. And she would just say, "Thanks for today. I learned a lot. Have a great week, Professor." And I remember she would do that every week. And on the last week, I called her up after everyone was packing everything. I called her up and I said, "I just wanted you to know how much that meant to me. And I really appreciate it. And you know what? 5 years later, we're still in touch just because of that small interaction." So for your listeners, it doesn't take much, but just try to make these interactions meaningful. So make it, instead of transactional, transformational.
Transformational. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That's so wonderful. Like, we should always try to impact other people's life and be transformational in our conversations with everybody around us. Yeah, that's good. And that translates to the way we write also, right? Like whenever we write, it's going to be also transformational. So
yes, yeah. Of course. I mean, the whole idea is you want to, if it's either fiction, non-fiction, you want to impart something with the reader. You don't just want to write frivolously or just insignificantly. There's got to be a reason why you want to do this. And part of that is to create this transformational experience. It may be what you encountered, and that's the important part. It doesn't have to be that you're going to go out and change the world. What you're going to do is a way for you to actually share with someone your experiences and what you've encountered.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. So in your travel memo, you documented your journey to India to find your roots with a faded photograph. That's so adventurous. So can you like share some of the lessons that you learned from this journey? Like what did you learn from
Yeah.
this travel? Yeah.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, part of that is, the book I wrote, Lost and Found, Seeking the Past and Finding Myself, is a book about my need to find my ancestral roots, but it was also about identity. So I'm a British-born Canadian with parents from Fiji Islands, which is near Australia, and grandparents and ancestors from India. And if you were to look at me, physically, I look Indian. And it's not uncommon for people to come up and say, well, what part of India are you from? And I say, well, I was born in England, raised in Canada. And then they say, well, no, your parents, what part of India? So, well, my parents come from Fiji Islands. And then they look at me going, but are you Indian? And I'm like, well, my grandparents and ancestors are from India. Yeah. And there's other times where people said, well, you're not Indian, you're Canadian. So I always struggled with identity. And I thought, okay, because I had never been to India prior to me. And I said, okay, I want to go to India to realize that part of my life that I think was culturally and ethnically not as present. Equally at the same time, my grandfather left India in 1905 and he wound up in Fiji and he never went back to India. So just as you would expect, our life or my parents' life in Fiji, and then they immigrated to England and then we immigrated to Canada. India was never really a factor in our lives because we got busy with life. But I remember a number of years ago, I said, no, this is something I think I would like to experience. And I love my travels. And I said, okay, I told my wife, let's go to India. So we wound up heading to India, but I wanted to find my ancestral roots. And all I had was a faded photograph. It's 3.5 inches by 3.5, dingy orange. We knew the name of the village, the town that's about 6 away, and the district that it's in, but that was it. So think of it as someone who's a foreigner going to a land that shouldn't be foreign to them in search of a needle in a haystack, but not sure where the haystack was. And the book itself, Lost and Found, Seeking the Past and Finding Myself, the title actually is the essence of what the story is. Lost and Found, Seeking the Past. I went in search of my ancestral roots and finding myself. I think many people struggle with identity. And for me, the identity piece was a challenge because I wasn't sure about that, that segmentation I was doing. So I'm British, Canadian, Fijian, and Indian. So there's a platter called a thali in Indian cuisine. It's a thali. So it's a platter with segmented dishes. And the segmented dishes are totally separate, but that's what my cultural identity was. They were all separated. When I went to India, I had an epiphany at 4 a.m. one day, because instead, I always looked at my life as a thali, that segmented platter. Instead, my realization is, I'm khichdi. And what khichdi is an Indian rice dish, which is a blend of spices and ingredients. So it helped me to realize that my identity is a blend as opposed to being segmented. And we're all khichdi. Doesn't matter who you are. We're all a blend of flavors. So that was about the identity piece, but the village was a difficult search because the information we had wasn't quite accurate. And, we had the name of the village, the town, the district, and through the search, some misinformation factored in. And, the journey had setbacks. There was anticipation, and I wrote about it in my book, that there's this anticipation. But with the setbacks, you become very reserved and guarded. I was like, I don't think I will ever find this village. And the challenge is none of my relatives or my cousins are going to search for this village. And there's a thin thread that connects me back to the village, and it's the photograph.
Yeah.
And I just remember with the setbacks, I finally said, forget that. Let's just get back to the basics. I mean, I've got a very short amount of time left. And we drove to the town that was supposed to be about 5-6 miles away. We started talking to people, and people said, well, actually, no, never heard of the village, or I think you're mistaken. Why are you looking for it? But one person said, actually, I think the village is up the road that way, about 5-6 miles.
Yeah.
We start driving. We came to an archway, and this old man was seated there. And we had no idea if this was the village. And we asked him, and he said, oh, no, this is the village. So we handed him the photograph. And this guy's like 80, 90 years old, no glasses. And he's photographed. And he said, well, the house I don't know, but the people in the front I don't know, but the person in the back looks like so-and-so. And he said, okay, let me get in your vehicle. And he takes us to this house, which doesn't look anything like this. People come out. And it was interesting because this one lady looks at this picture and she goes, that's me in the picture. Who are you?
Wow.
And then I was like, wait, did I hear you correctly? She goes, yeah, that's me. Who are you? So when I explained who I was, it suddenly made me realize I found my grandfather's house. The lady is an aunt of mine. My grandfather's brother, older brother, this was his family. So my grandfather's older brother's family is where I am right now. I went out, this was so important to me. I went out to the fields. I had Ziploc bags. I scooped up dirt and I put it into the bag and I brought it home to my relatives as a way that they could have a piece of this village. But the story or the importance of this is, yeah, there was a lot of setbacks. There were people who said, you won't find it, you can't find it. Why are you looking? So there was a lot of noise. And I chose not to listen to the noise. I chose to go on this journey and, realize that I may not find my grandfather's house. And that was okay. But there were realizations of being in a place that I had never been and experiencing it. The other lesson is, people said, well, it's great. You found what you were looking for, but I will never find what I'm looking for. A person from, their background is from Italy, from Sicily. And he said, Sam, I'm so happy you found your village and your house, but I'll never find my ancestral roots. Because he said that there's no record of anything from Sicily. And he said, well, we'll never find it. And I said, but have you been to Sicily? And he goes, yeah, no, I went there. And I said, okay, but when you were there, did you feel a connection to this place? Because your ancestors are from here. You didn't have to find the house, the town, the village, or the district, but was there something that connected you to Sicily? And he said, oh, no, absolutely. I said, well, you've just done the same thing I have, but maybe not to that extent or the micro that I had done. But you realized this is something that makes up your foundation. He was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So we are all connected somewhere.
That's true. And through that your journey, you were able to connect back with your ancestors, right? How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? Finally seeing your auntie or seeing people that are related to your grandparents.
Yeah. I think for me it was important because I had taken that very thin thread that connected us and was able to then realize something of significance. Now, part of it was the ability to accomplish something that you set out to do. But the other one was, did I really do this? Like, how India is such a large country, it's complicated. And the fact that I was able to do this, but just the whole idea that you were able to actually reconnect with a part of your life. It's like finding that one connecting puzzle piece that connects a segment that is just sitting to the side that you haven't really completed or built, but now you're able to join that with the bigger puzzle as a result. So it was a very euphoric moment. And now with the book, the next thing I'm trying to do is I've just had the screenplay written for it, and maybe it becomes a movie. Who knows?
Oh,
That'll be
great.
the next iteration. Yeah.
Yes, I'll look forward to watching that movie. That'd be awesome. Yes. But I'm, from your story that you share right now, how are you able to let go of the distraction or the noise from people around you when you are, going on this almost impossible journey? How are you able to make your voice louder than all the noise around you?
Yeah. And part of it is I thrive in ambiguity and uncertainty. And that's a space not a lot of people feel comfortable in.
Mhm.
I like it when things are difficult or complicated. The realization I may not be able to do it. I'm okay with that. But I think for me, when someone says you can't, you shouldn't, you won't, you've now given me the power to prove you wrong. And I don't mean that in a sense of, oh yeah, just watch me, and then go back and says, I told you so, I could do this. It's a quiet confidence that I move forward going, okay, how can I do this? And then I start, instead of dwelling on the problem, I start focusing on opportunities,
Mhm.
because with opportunities are the solutions.
Yeah.
Uh, and I really try to focus in on that. And again, the noise is there, but equally at the same time, the noise is very present with a lot of the people that I interact and engage with. There's a lot of noise telling young people, you can't accomplish this, or you should be this is comfortable. What I've always said is I'm a champion and enabler. In other words, I'm here to listen to what's important to you.
Mhm.
And then how do we make this happen? How
Mhm.
can I support your journey? So I try to be that person that activates the voice within to
Mhm.
be louder than the noise around.
Around.
But
Yeah.
that's also meant that I've had to do that for myself as well.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
true. And from your experience so far, and from your life lessons, how would you advise us to, or how can we successfully, define our personal and professional paths? Like you define this
Yeah.
path for you, this very difficult path to find your ancestors, and in your career and life also, you've done a lot, gotten awards, and at TEDx talks and in conferences like that. How can we, learn from your experience and define our own personal and professional paths?
I think the most important thing is to stop focusing on what you're doing and internalize it and start focusing on who you are.
Mm.
So there are 5 things that guide and direct me in life: servant leadership, story sharing, activator igniter, champion enabler, and community do-gooder.
Mm.
The moment I started coming up with 5 things, as I call it, my 5 key foundations, or what matters to me, things I'm not willing to compromise in life and career, not career, but life and career, this became my foundation. The moment I started creating this foundation, it offered clarity, because now, instead of the way that most people do it, is you pick, your classes in university, and then you take an internship or a co-op opportunity, which becomes a job eventually. And 20, 30 years later, you've gone down a track.
Mm.
But was that the right place and the right thing to do? What else was there? What I'm trying to do, though, is say, let's focus on who you, and let's create this foundation that you can then use and work from. So for me, like, I've got about 12 projects I'm working on presently, but all 12 hit 5 out of 5. It's separate and distinct. They layer into each other. So when I talk to people, I always say, start focusing on who you are. So what are 5 things that you are not willing to compromise? And then, I'll say, give me one thing, like, look at your job. What do you like about it? Don't like. What about when you were in school? What do you like and didn't like about social? What do you do? Give me one thing that's important. So maybe they say, well, family is important. I said, okay, why is family? And asking why is a critical part. Well, by family, the relationships and the connectedness I have to family is really important. I said, okay, so, and why is that important? And I go down a pathway. eventually I'll say, well, you use the word relationships and connectedness. And they're like, yeah, does that apply to your work environment? Oh, sure. Does that apply to when you were in school? Oh, absolutely. What about in your social life, relationships and connectedness? And they're, oh, I have to have that. So I said, instead of family, can we replace it with relationships and connectedness as one of the foundational things that you're not willing to compromise? So now, once you have the first one, you build in the other four to have five. Now you can look at where you are presently. Does it hit out of five? Does it hit 2 out of 5? What's missing? And how can we build this in? Yeah. So what I try to do is lay down this foundation, and people might have a fear of, you're making me choose. What if they're not the right words? Well, you can change them anytime in your life as you experience and grow as an individual. Change and interchange the words, but lays down that foundation that offers you clarity as you move forward.
Wow, that's so good. We need that clarity. It's very important for us for clarity. Yes. Wow. And is it the same way we could also achieve like a successful life or fulfill our purpose in life also?
Absolutely. Because now you know what makes up your foundation. And when you hit 5 out of 5, you don't have a job or career, you hit fulfillment. And because it aligns with who you are. I mean, the projects I work on, for the most part, don't feel like work. It's enjoyable. I really enjoy what I do. And that's where I really want to try to get people to a position and a point where they can say, oh, this is amazing. This is what I've been to do for, my life. And this makes a lot of sense. That's important.
That's important. That's true. Wow, Sam, I've learned so much from you from this conversation. Like, I know there's still much more to learn from you, and there are people out there or listeners that will still want to ask you more questions or get across or connect with you. So what's the best way to do this? What's the best way to connect with you, work with you, get your books, get your services?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got my website, and it's www.sam-thiara, thiara.com. And I've got about 185 blog posts that are free for people to read and experience. My book is there, speaking engagements, mentorship, and coaching. But I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter if people want to find me there as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to place all of this information in the show note of this episode. So I encourage everyone who is listening to just click on the links, copy the links, and get across to Sam, get the books, read the free blog posts, and just, be amazed by the wonderful work that Sam has done so far. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you taught me today, Sam.
Oh, no, thank you, Toby. And again, it just goes back to that signature tagline, everyone's life is an autobiography. Make yours worth reading. That's what my goal and objective is to help people be amazing in lives and, write an autobiography that is fantastic and is authentic to them.
Yes, and from today we could start writing that autobiography that is worthy to read. That's worth reading. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your day? If you're loving the insightful conversations and captivating stories on Mirror Talk Podcast, here's a friendly nudge to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering messages and thought-provoking discussions we bring to your ears. But wait, there's more. We're all about spreading positivity and inspiration, and you can be a part of it too. How? By sharing the love with your friends and family. Share this episode with your loved ones, and let's create a ripple effect of empowerment and growth together. And hey, if you've been enjoying what you hear, why not take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review? Your feedback fuels our passion to keep delivering content that resonates with you. So hit that subscribe button, share the love, and leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going and spread the Mirror Talk magic far and wide. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your support means the world to us.